I was born in Eastern Europe, Bulgaria. I was raised in East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania. We had no energy and electricity, so the only reliable source of power was actually water being pumped by solar energy. And Tanesco, the electric utility, only had energy from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning. And that's when you had to fill your bathtub with water too, because if the energy wasn't working, the water wasn't working either. And everybody kind of had solar pumps. So solar made sense, and every time we had electricity and roads in Africa, the animals would disappear. I would no longer see giraffes and elephants outside my bedroom window. It made me kind of upset. But it led to a belief that there's some kind of a sustainable structure that we can live with and work with. I went back to Eastern Europe, which was a big cultural shock, because all of a sudden I was branded the pro-Western oriented element. I had no idea what that meant in a communist country. But, you know, I quickly figured out what fear was about, what government not telling you the truth about was with Chernobyl. All of a sudden, we had perestroika. And believe it or not, with everything that happened, it was Chernobyl that brought the Berlin Wall down. Glasnost and perestroika happened because of an energy movement, because of a people movement, because of people being aware that, hey, you know what? There's an excuse for government to lie to us. I didn't make this choice. I didn't make a choice to be poisoned by radiation when on May 1st, Chernobyl happened on April 26th. We were all told, oh no, nothing is happening. This is just Western propaganda. You know, it's local communist uranium. It's not that bad. You know, our fallout is more benign than those capitalists over there. So we're marching on May 1st, and there's rain falling, and you're feeling sick, and your skin is kind of raw, and you're like, what's going on over here? And all of a sudden, 2 weeks later down the road, we're told, don't eat the vegetables, you should have stayed home, why didn't you take iodine? But it was all playing catch up. And there's this firm disbelief and this anxiety with it, an energy resource that, you know, we really don't need anymore. And when I started focusing on what my career in life would be, I said, I'm an international person. I'm interested in protecting people and human rights. And what is the most basic human right of all? Energy. It's the basis of everything. If we don't have energy, we're people who are playing catch up. And it's not just about the United States in terms of environmental justice. It's the whole world. There's 2.5 billion people worldwide who have no electricity, who have no energy, who have no jobs, who have no water. And you know what? This ties into our economic development here. It ties into creating a future for everybody that we can be happy and feel safe about, but we don't have to worry about nuclear proliferation. We don't have to worry about, well, are the utilities telling us the truth? Is the government telling us the truth? What is happening over there? It's deeply personal when it comes down to that level. And it's very, very scary when people tell you, Chernobyl only killed 45 people. Yeah, immediately in the aftermath. But 250% increase in childhood cancers? The orphans of Chernobyl? Nobody's talking about that. You know why? I did my law school thesis on that. Because they weren't signature cancers. And because it's not a signature cancer, we can't tie it to the radiation. Oh, what if it increased 200%? What if it increased 500%? Who cares? It's not signature like mesothelioma, therefore, only the people who died in the first week after Chernobyl are the victims. Everybody else could have happened from anything, so we're just going to discount it. And that is not something any of us signed up for. And why I focused on renewable energy and the environment as a whole, it's a basic human rights, but it's also an empowerment issue, because renewable energy is truly power to the people. It lets you take away that power from a government or a utility, bring it into your own hands, and say, I can have those solar panels on my roof. I can charge my electric vehicle. I can be fuel-free. I can be fossil-free. I can do it. I'm empowered. I can do it in Africa. I can do it in Asia. I can do it in Afghanistan. I can do it in the US. And why people aren't raising? Because this is a grassroots movement. This is a people movement. This is a people empowerment movement. And that's why I was so happy when I saw Al's work. It's like, yeah, it's about distributed generation. It's about microgrids. It's about empowering the local communities. It's about bringing the jobs home. And it's about taking that technology and exporting it worldwide. You know, before it used to be, hey, it's the economy stupid. Right now, it's the technology stupid. Renewables are technology. They're technology-driven. It's a strong technology, and it's breakthrough, and it's something that we're really good at here in California. We can make it happen, and we can help people around the world. So Renewables 100 was focused and created as a result of the World Council for Renewable Energy. It's not a consulting firm. It's a not-for-profit. And it's dedicated to spreading the word for 100% renewable energy, because it's possible. Because renewables are no longer the niche application or the alternative. They're the solution. They're the pathway to the future. They're the paradigm shift. And either we're going to do it, and we're going to plan for it, and we're going to make it happen, or it's going to happen by default with disasters all around us. So again, this is the opportunity for people to take power back into their own hands and say, you know what, we will vote with our dollar, and we will make our vote count, and we will elect people who will do the right thing, and not have talking heads tell me, oh, Fukushima is the lesson learned. You know what? Tsunamis don't happen in California. Oh, maybe we stored the waste somewhere else, but nobody focuses. It's 50,000 years of radiation. Chernobyl is a dead city. Who takes those costs on? So there's a lot of debate that can take place, but one thing that shouldn't be debated is nuclear is not an alternative. It's not a solution. They should be shut down, closed down right now. The Germans did it. Why our California plants aren't done? I don't know. So we've got to define the objective of a perfect framework, because it's a framework that makes everything happen. We need to make sure that we have an overall content and that we're focusing on things where we don't want the greenwashers to be waving the green flag with the nuclear industry saying, oh, we're the solution, we're going to be the ones that make everything happen. No. The green energies are the ones that need to take the flag and say, we can provide 100% renewable energy solution, and we're going to do it. We don't need anybody else to do it for us. Frameworks are very important because, believe me, what legislative frameworks do to advance renewables and the implementation, the strongest generation wins. But it's really a problem because it focuses on oligopolies. It doesn't create a situation of a robust program that can give the smaller technologies the ability to win. And if you have a program that actually enables you to tier the system like a feed-in tariff or a clean contract, which is what we have now in most of the European countries that are outpacing the US in installation of green power, you see that that's a framework that works. And you know, we like to talk about the perfect, but sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. So let's take an example that works, and let's have something that actually has been implemented and can show results, and bring it down here, because we don't want an administratively cumbersome program, and we don't want something there where some talking head again can come and tell us what's going on instead of being able to see for ourselves what happens. If we look in terms of costs and what it costs to have our energy right now, I mean, nuclear, out of the whole energy system in the US, the electricity system, it supplies about 20%. But in the energy system, it's about 6%. It takes about 52% of our R&D dollars. And this is a technology that is indemnified if there's an accident. So if there were an accident in San Onofre, San Diego, and Los Angeles, all those high-value properties that you have a dirty bomb that just happened, guess what? Uncle Sam's going to come and say, too bad, you lost your property value. Look at your insurance. It does not cover in case of a nuclear accident. Hey, I didn't sign up for that. You know, there's alternatives there. Let's figure out if we can make it happen. Oil prices. We were talking about inflation. These are old numbers, but now oil is over $100 a barrel. Our imports are increasing. Our local production is decreasing. And again, if you have a framework that enables you to develop, here's where you have the curve. Look at Europe. They have a good, robust framework, and we'll talk about that later. And we've got the United States teeter-tottering very much correlated to the spurts and the advances in the programs. Every year, we don't even know if the government is going to function, let alone if we're going to have a program. Investments in renewables. I mean, why aren't we investing in renewables? Investments in renewables are growing. Investments coupled with a good legislative framework, they take off. And that's what's happening in Europe and in Germany and in Japan to a certain extent. The United States, when we were the leaders in these technologies, are following behind. Average annual global rates. Solar photovoltaic, the largest, followed closely by wind, biofuels, coal. Nuclear is 1.1%. It barely even registers on the scale, but it takes more of our money than anything else. Jobs, and everybody talks about jobs. The jobs are here. They're real, they're local, they're in the technology. It's a clean process to manufacture. It's a clean process to install. It's not connected to a fossil fuel line. So you're taking away that fear of inflation and escalating prices. You're not utilizing a resource. For solar, for instance, if you're making it out of silicon, it's the most abundant material on the face of this earth after oxygen. And you can recycle it. It's safe. It's emission-free, it's fuel-free, your dog can play on it, your kids can play around it. Heck, they can chew on the wires and probably nothing will happen because the inverter will short out. It's safe, and I want it in my backyard. I don't want the nuke in my backyard. I don't want the fossil power in my backyard. Energy supply installed capacity. Again, see the correlation. Here's 1990, where we had no program in Germany whatsoever, and I take great pride in it because it's working for the World Council. We drafted the legislation. And you know what? You learn. It's trial and error. You have a program that's designed, and first it was uniform for everybody, and it was enough as a uniform program, 8 cents a kilowatt hour for wind, and wind actually successfully developed very gradually. It wasn't enough for solar. So we said, hey, you know, we need to come up with a better system for solar. What makes sense? So we talked to industry. We brought in the unions. We brought in the NGOs. We brought in the politicians. And just then we were also having a very, very strong economic crisis in Germany because the two Germanys were coming together and the Deutsche Mark was becoming the euro. So it was an economic development program. And investment in renewables is what spurred economic development. Right now, investments in solar and wind outpace the job creation, the employment, and the money going through the steel industry, the coal industry, and the automobile industry. And Germany, with the solar equivalent of Juneau, Alaska, is leading the solar revolution? I mean, that's an oxymoron if there ever was one. Here's the example of why wind had a more gradual development, but again, very, very much connected to good incentive programs. And those are incentive programs. Let us make a difference. There's a huge difference between a subsidy and an incentive. A subsidy never goes away. Think Price-Anderson Act. It goes in more and more and more. External costs that we internalize as a society, but we don't charge the coal industry or any of the other fossil industries, or even the automobile industry. And think an incentive. A solar incentive that goes down over time, but the technology installation goes up, it becomes cost effective and empowers people. Again, an example of good legislation and a good framework. The area, Germany versus the US. Germany is 23 times smaller than the US. That's not counting Alaska. They have much worse conditions, wind conditions than us. They have 23 times more installation. No, I mean 2 times more installation of wind power than we do here in the US, with a good incentive program at a lower price. Italy was one of the programs that didn't have a feed-in tariff. They introduced one in 2008. And look at the growth in Italy. If you take Italy, the USA, and California, in terms of megawatts installed, that's just for pure solar. And that's mostly distributed solar. 90%, over 90% of all installations in Europe are distributed rooftop solar. They're local jobs, they're local people, they're people actually empowering themselves. It's not owned by the large utilities. Actually, they specifically keep the utilities out of it. Oh, Italy has a population of 60 million compared to California's 40 million. The population in the US is 5 times that of Italy. Look at 2010, 1,500 megawatts installed in Italy. 2,640 total. Compared to the overall USA, they surpassed the USA, they surpassed California, and California is considered to be the leader in 3 years. So Germany installed more solar PV in the first month of 2010, about 240 megawatts, than the state of California installed in 2009. Again, not so sunny Germany. They did do this. They did do this because there's a choice of where does the utility money go. Does it go into another nuke, or does it go into empowering the people to have some of the technologies on their rooftops and actually having a choice and avoiding a lot of the costs that we have? You're going to hear a lot of naysayers. The next thing the utilities are going to start raising is going to be, oh, but renewables, they're intermittent, they're unstable. We have to have backup power. We have to have spinning reserves. We've got to have everything to back up that solar system because the sun's going to go away. And then, generation will stop. Then we need to come in and back it all up. And the wind's going to stop blowing. We need to come in and back it up. So they'll say, arbitrarily, in Germany, they said 20% and that's it. We can't do anymore. Yeah, we did a study. They can do easily. They can easily do 30 or 40% with existing technologies. But we had great speakers this morning. Storage is a technology you can implement. You can make renewables dispatchable. You don't have to back them up 100%. Utilities are used to dealing with forced outages. They're used to dealing with unscheduled outages. If they have a 20-minute window, okay, I'll give them 2 hours. We'll be generous. They can schedule that power through the grid. They can back it up. They can play it, and it works. So If we focus, again, on investing in technology, in our own local resources that we implement here and we export worldwide, we win. Everybody wins. The environment wins, the economy wins, the people win. The only ones who lose are the utilities because they haven't figured out how to make money out of it yet. And I come from the utility background. I'm not bashing the utilities. I'm one of the utility people. I worked at the LA Department of Water and Power. I worked at the New York Power Authority. I worked for the trust that set up the ISO and the PX, which was an interesting experiment in how you can regulate retail but deregulate wholesale. But that's a different story. So, we can have the technologies. And again, who survives? It's not the strongest of species who survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. Inspiration and motivation is all it takes. Yes. Either you're going to change or you're going to be extinct. We need to talk to the policymakers. The policymakers are important, but don't expect them to introduce change. They need to hear from us. This needs to be grassroots. In Germany, it was a referendum. We went to the people and we basically made a referendum. What would you be willing to pay to make renewables a part of this economy? Do you know what the average cost of the German feed-in tariff that everybody calls so rich is? €1 a month per meter per family. And you know what everybody says? That's worth investing in my future for. People say it's a tax. Yeah, but look at the savings. Look at the benefits. We'll soon see results of what happened. We've got to convince the people it's not an easy job. People don't think about energy. Right now we have an opportunity because people have had a crash course in energy with escalating gas prices, with what's happening in Japan, with what happened with the BP oil spill, with what happened with the miners and the tragedies. We need to convince companies that they can make money. We need to convince scientists in the investment community. We need policymakers. India is the first country to create a ministry for renewable energy. We don't have a ministry for renewable energy in the US. And the DOE and the energy agencies are basically fossil agencies. So they don't really, they cater to renewables, but it's just catering. It's not making it a priority. We have the right energy to implement change. We need the will and the motivation. Look at the cost estimates, because renewable energy, against when it's distributed, and that's its biggest benefit, because it can be at the load on the customer meter, it displaces transmission and distribution costs. It displaces the generation costs. But just the distribution upgrades of $300 billion that are expected over the next 15 years in the US. That's a humongous cost that they offset. And if you take that, without subsidies and with subsidies, again, I'll say incentives, and I need to change this slide. But this is what solar would cost, and that's the levelized cost. With subsidies, it's about, over a little bit more depending on where you are in retail, and much higher than wholesale costs. But if you bring in CO2, if you bring in security costs, and I worked for LA Department of Water and Power when 9/11 happened, just the security expenses that go into beefing up security at a nuclear power plant after a terrorist attack, I don't know what will happen with when we go into what could happen potentially with a tsunami. That would probably triple the cost of nuclear. If you bring those costs in, hey, renewables start to look very attractive. They're already lower cost in wholesale and retail. Costs are coming down. Good legislation brought costs down over 73% over the last 2 decades. Solar installations, 30% average annual growth, led by Germany. Again, Juneau, Alaska people. Japan can be 100% renewable energy reliant. Actually, a comrade of ours in Renewables 100 did a study, but the growth of this industry from 94 to 2005 is exponential, from 500 to 70,000 systems, 69% reduction in costs. And again, incentive versus subsidy, the incentive from 50% in 94 dropped to less than 3%. And look at the installations, shooting up through the roof. Again, it works. Price-Anderson Act. We don't know where we're going to find our nuclear. So we need legislation. We need a framework. We need to create something for the policymakers that has very, very certain indicators to make sure that we lead to market certainty, which is a program that is 20 years, which is what in Germany, and why it's so administratively easy and now adopted by the EU, which adopted our framework. It's differentiated per technology. So solar has a different incentive, solar ground mount has a different incentive, solar PV. Building integrated has a different incentive, but it's fixed for 20 years. So when you start your project, you know what that system will be for the next 20 years. You know what the return will be. Guaranteed interconnection. The utilities will fool with you on the interconnection. You have to make sure you take care of the interconnection, because if you cannot get your system interconnected, you can't be generating the electricity. So guaranteed interconnection. In Germany, basically we said the utility has to take the energy and they have to pay. No contract necessary. The kilowatt hour goes into the grid, the utility pays, period. Taken out of the equation. And they have to be the right set of customer incentives so that the people will do it. And I don't have to remind you of what happened with the coal mine explosion, the oil spill, the workers killed in the pipeline explosion in Pennsylvania. We still don't even know what's the ramification of the Fukushima reactors is going to be. But what was really poignant when 9/11 happened was the San Onofre nuclear power plant spokesperson who said, well, we didn't design these plants to withstand a terrorist attack or a plane crashing into them. Now, well, we didn't design them to withstand a 9-point-something earthquake. Well, we didn't design them to withstand a tsunami. Nobody said they were perfect. You have to choose. You know, you get into accidents with your car. So that happens. You total your car. This is what happens with nuclear power plants. This was the French, not surprisingly, environmental minister saying that. And we shouldn't be talking about nuclear and the safety of nuclear right now because this is a very sad time for the people of Japan. So it is insensitive to say anything negative about nuclear power. This is like you are denying the heroism of the people who are fighting for their lives in that nuclear power plant. Hello. To me, it's personal too. And I'll tell you what. In Chernobyl, my best friend, who had just married out of high school to her sweetheart, and he was a nice guy, 21-year-old, serving in the Bulgarian military. Chernobyl happens. He gets taken off to go to Russia to do something. We don't know what. Well, turns out he was one of the helicopter pilots, dropping concrete on a burning reactor with no mask, no clothing, nothing. The boy died 4 months later, 2 days before his son was born. You know what the official story was? Pneumonia. 21-year-old healthy guy. So it is personal. It's very personal. It's people's lives. And it's heroes or no heroes, but he's not counted as one of the 45 because it happened a few months later. So yeah, I mean, it's not a peaceful anthem. There's nothing peaceful about nuclear power, and we shouldn't focus on that at all. Renewable energy will not ruin the economy, like many will tell you. We see that it's a much more robust technology than anything else. It's a key to strengthening the economy. Prices are going down in technologies. Commodity prices of fossil power are going up. And renewable energy jobs grow in California despite the recession. Just last year alone, Germany installed 6.6 gigawatts of solar. That's the equivalent of 3 nuclear power plants in 1 year with no siting issues, no environmental issues, no nothing. They were able to shut down their nuclear power plants and say for the very first time that they can shut down the nukes without disrupting energy supply. Oh, yes. Okay. Santa Simplicita, we need to make sure that our contracts are very streamlined, that we're able to do our interconnection very easily. The German model, 1 page for up to 20 megawatts. You sign the interconnection, you're done. Look at what happens here. This is just for 1 megawatt. It's 10 times the size if you have anything more. I mean, talk to the people outside. They've employed 40 people pushing paperwork, more people than are doing installations. I mean, really, I mean, we are about job creation, but...
Meaningful work.
Yeah, exactly. And then renewables, energy, and transportation go well together. The fuel of the future is going to be electric, hybrid electric, or anything else. Produce it homegrown with solar power, wind power, anything else. Microgrids, smart grids. This is what the future will look like. And it's not me that's saying it. It's also Shell Power that says it. And the Scientific Board of Global Change in the Environment to the governments in the EU. That we're going to have pretty much 100% renewable energy systems by 2100, but maybe sooner, and fossil fuel is going to be diminished. So we've got crises going on right now. We've got the climate crisis, the pollution crisis, the water crisis, the food crisis, the security crisis, the biodiversity, poverty crisis. And, you know, fossil fuel dependence is causing all these crises. If we don't change directions, you might end up where you're headed. So it's time to change direction and have a paradigm shift. That's why it's power to the people, solitariat, unite. Let's make it happen 100%.